Redditors who are the product of RP or incest, how did you find out? Did you ever confront the perpetrator? Serious. Hey. It's my thread to shine. Okay. So my real parents are my mom and her twin brother. No. I'm not Joffrey. I found out last summer when I was 15. It was nighttime and I came down a staircase to get a glass of water. My mom was laying on the sofa. He had been drinking earlier. She doesn't usually get drunk. She likes to drink wine. But never really enough to get drunk. But this time she was really drunk. I passed her on the way to the kitchen and she just spoke up and said that she was glad I wasn't her husband's child. I asked her WTF was she talking about when she told me that her brother was the father of me and my siblings. She stated it was the reason why we were so perfect. I haven't confronted my mom or her brother about it. My mom either pretends she never told me, or she was too drunk to remember. I'm 100% sure it was consensual incest, not RP. My mom talks to her brother a lot, and she always visits him. My dad is always away, so sometimes my mom will bring us to her brother's house and we'll sleep over. Me and my siblings even have our own rooms at his house. If anyone has any questions I'll answer them, but I'm going to shower first. Edit. Back. Throwaway for obvious reasons. My dad basically RP'd my mom to have me. My mother never wanted a kid her entire life, and kind of hated children in general. My dad knew this when he married her, but I think secretly it was always his plan to somehow find a way to have a kid. He tried to get her drunk quite a few times so she would forget about a condom and whatnot, but it never worked. One day, he came home from a night of hard partying with his friends, and basically had his way with my mom. She resisted and tried to fight him off when she figured out what his intent was, but was overcome. My dad told me all of this when we went fishing last year. He thought I would be happy with the story and think of him as some sort of hero. I don't. My grandmother is a product of RP. The people she thought were her parents were actually her grandparents. And her sister Sophie was actually her mother. Her bio mother, Sophie, was RP'd by a male friend when she was 17. And fell pregnant. Since it was 1929. Abortion was not an option. So they made the decision for her to be raised as a sister, instead of granddaughter. She was not told until her bio mother died at 35 from cancer. She was extremely upset at being brought into the world the way she was, and that she was never allowed to know Sophie as her mother. My grandma never told anyone but her husband, and my mom and her sister did not find out until my mom was 25 when my grandfather accidentally told her. I am technically not supposed to know, but my hearing is far more astute than my mom realized when she has phone conversations at full volume a room away. Throwaway for the obvious reason. I am the product of RP incest. My grandfather RP'd and impregnated my mom when she was 13. We came from an extremely religious family at the time, so abortion was never an option. From my understanding of things, this had been going on between him and my mother for a lot of years. He went to jail, where he still is. I have thought about going to see him a lot over the years, just out of morbid curiosity, but I have never done it. There was never really any secret about it. My mom and her mother raised me. They scaled the information about the situation to age-appropriate levels, but they never hid anything. It was weird, and I got some counseling about it when I hit my teen years. But to be honest, I feel like it never really strongly affected me. I'm late to the thread, but I am a product of RP. My mother met my father, who was a crack and heroin addict, and had my older sister with him. They got married and he started beating her and my sister regularly. The abuse went on for years until he was brazenly bringing women home to frick in front of her, and my mom had enough and left. He had nowhere to go and was sleeping couch to couch with my sister. He looked everywhere for her, found her somehow and RP'd her. I was conceived. When I was born he tried to say I was the neighbor's child and my mom was sleeping around, even though I am the spitting image of his mother. Anyway, he tried to choke me to death as an infant. My mom stabbed him with a hot dog poker. Not sure of the name, but it's the utensil you use to turn over hot dogs on a grill. He went to jail and got out a few years later, and my stepfather shot him when he resumed stalking my mother. I found out I was a product of RP from my little sister using it as a way to make fun of me in an argument. My mom confirmed it nonchalantly when I asked if it was true. My family is all types of fricked up. Funny story. He sent me a friend's request on Facebook a few days ago, trying to get in contact with me 28 years later. It's sad. I do not want a relationship with a guy who has RP'd and beat most of the women he has in his life. A few years ago I met a girl at a mutual friend's house who ended up telling me how her grandfather was also her father, so this girl's mother was RP'd by her own father. She told me this because I had given her a bracelet that I was wearing. I make jewelry and like to hand it out. I have very tiny wrists. And she was so excited that it fit her. She was excited about that because on one hand she was missing a thumb and her hand was just kinda strange looking and small. So most bracelets would slide off. He ended up taking some hits out of a gas mask bong, my first time ever doing so, and she told me about her grandfather as an explanation for her hand. She also told me about how her brother RP'd her, even on the day her mother died. I think it's safe to say incest was common in her family. You wouldn't have really noticed anything different about her unless you knew. But she was quite small and just a tad strange looking, plus, deformed hand. Honestly, it was pretty surreal being so stoned and having this girl who was mostly a stranger tell me this so calmly. This was in the ghetto. And she was with her boyfriend and their baby. She was very sweet. A real spunky firecracker type girl. I've never seen her since, but I think of her often. I hope her life turned out alright. So yeah. Not my story, but it's one that always stuck with me. My grandfather was a product of RP. My great-grandfather was married to a woman who was put into a mental asylum. He had 3 little girls, so hired a nanny from the Cherokee reservation nearby. He RP'd the nanny. She gave birth to my grandfather. To my knowledge, my grandfather never confronted his father about it, but his mother, the nanny, made it clear. She died getting eye surgery so she could see my mother when she was born. I am not a product of RP, but one of my kids is. I am a good mom. I have never told her. But as she gets older she looks more and more like the rapist, and I cry in my room nearly every day because of it. She's mine. I know this. But it's just so much to deal with. Over a decade, and it may as well have happened yesterday. My husband keeps suggesting therapy. But I guess I'm afraid it will all come out and she will be crushed. My husband is an amazing father to her. So at least there's that. IDK how I would cope without him. My grandfather was a product of RP. My family are from the Fujian province. And my grandfather was the result of the Japanese invasion into China. His mother died in childbirth and he was an orphan. Worked as a farmer. An alcoholic, and died of lung cancer. My father doesn't talk much about his father. But I hear stories from the rest of the family. But my father got a scholarship to study in Canada and moved over there to get an education. Got his bachelor's in engineering and master's in economics from the University of Alberta. My mom is a product of RP. My grandparents lived in Mexico at the time in a remote and rural village. My grandfather stole my grandmother while she was doing laundry when she was 16 or 17. She told me he took her to the mountains and RP'd her and beat her over several days. When she got back, her only option was to marry him because she was shamed. She never saw her family again. Every child my grandmother had was a product of RP. 16 children. He beat her mercilessly. Most all of her male children were also rapists and pedophiles. They tried to RP their sisters while they were sleeping multiple times. My uncles RP'd and molested my sister and I for over a decade. My grandma got away when my grandfather escalated and tried to kill her with a machete. Her oldest son found out and whisked her away to the US. She never remarried and had a fear of men. He died a horrible death. Alone and regretful. At the age of 73. My sperm donor is my mother's stepfather. She was 12 the first time he RP'd her. 14 when she got pregnant with my older, only full-blooded, sister. 15 when he got her pregnant with me. Then she ran away with us. He found her, kidnapped us and told her that if she ever wanted to see us again, she'd come home. Meanwhile her mother did nothing about the abuse. Even blamed her for garnering so much of his attention. My dad married her at age 17. He saved all of our lives. He's my favorite person every day. I found out because a half-sister of mine tried to tell me and my full sister, after an argument, that my mother wanted it. Asked for it. She and her full sister went back east to visit him recently with their toddler and infant children. Makes me sick. Edit. Stuff I forgot.